Hi, good evening, everyone. Glad to see you all once again in a session which, of course, was announced in a very short notice. And the topic is quite interesting. Actually, I was teaching this topic in one of my sessions, regular sessions where I teach Azure DevOps. And then it took different directions when I started interacting with the participants, how the branching workflows are implemented in your organization. I got a lot of mixed opinions from different participants. So we ultimately figured out that there is no best way. We ultimately concluded that there is nothing best. What suits us, we should do it as per the organization culture and blah blah. And probably that was the only motivation for me to have a session, though it is going to be a very small session, mostly theoretical session, that actually motivated me to share this knowledge with the larger audience on how a Git branching workflow can be done in an organization. If you have already done it before in the past in your organization, well and good. But if you're a raw fresher, this is a great opportunity for you to understand how the applications are actually built by multiple developers in coordination with each other, and how these coordination or collaboration leads to deployment of application into different environments. So ultimately our focus is very simple here. We want to build an application and don't want to deploy into a production environment and then realize that we have done something blunder and then start doing the rollback. No, we don't want to get into that kind of stuff. We have multiple environments in our organization for our application. We have something like dev environment where the developers are going to test the application, where the developers are going to check if the application is meeting all the requirements of the logic which was put up by the client and they have written in the code of their choice. After the application works well in the development environment and the developers are convinced, probably it would then go to a testing team who has a very good knowledge of the domain, and they are responsible for testing the application from end user perspective. Sometimes it can be automation testing, sometimes it can be manual testing, and there are different types of testing which they would want to do. Majorly, let us say UI testing or integration testing or load testing or so many different types. Once the application has been thoroughly tested and figured out that everything is all good, we would want our application to be deployed into user acceptance testing, UAT environment. And once the application is thoroughly tested in the UAT environment, which is mostly done by the client himself or his nominated team, which is definitely going to be a team different than the team working with the development organization. And once it is approved into UAT, we would then want to eventually move the application into the production environment. So by the time the application goes into the production environment, we are very sure that it's pretty stable, it's not going to crash. To the extent possible, testing has been done, it is bug free. Yeah, definitely there is always a chance that even after going into production there can be something wrong. And then how we can probably restore the old version, or how we can probably make those changes which are quick and make the rectifications in the production environment. So these are all things which always has been a concern for many organizations, maintaining so many environments, ensuring consistency of the application which is tested, the same thing should be deployed. The procedures should not be radically different from one environment to the other environment. The configurations should be consistent. So all these things, yes, DevOps solves the problem to a very large extent. It eliminates a lot of dependency on human beings and replaces that with automated process building steps. So you create CI pipelines, you create CD pipelines, and through the CI and CD pipelines, you want to ensure that your code from the Git repository is taken, built, deployed. All the three things are going to happen. And of course, you would also do some kind of monitoring after that. All good. There is probably a lot of content I have already delivered on what are the DevOps practices in multiple other videos you might find on YouTube. But in this particular session, I would like to primarily focus on the starting point. That is the Git repository. For any pipeline, whether it is CI pipeline or it is CD pipeline, we always have a starting point, that is Git repository. So from Git repository, how the code goes into the continuous integration pipeline, and some artifacts will be generated, and these artifacts would go into CD pipeline, and then they would be deployed into different environment. Yes, I don't want to discuss CI pipeline today. I don't want to discuss CD pipeline today. For what we want to understand very clearly is the developer is having all the code in one centralized location, which is a Git repository managed by maybe GitHub, managed by maybe Azure repos or Bitbucket, or any Git repository it can be, which is a distributed version control system. Git is a distributed version control system, wherein on the remote machine we are going to have the branches, and also the required branches would be there on the development machine present locally on their desktops. So if I talk about the branching workflows, how should the branching be done? Git, the basic advantage is branches. There will be master branch, or sometimes we call it as main branch. There is a development branch, there is a release branch, then there can be quick fix branches or hot fix branches. Like that, there are different types of branches which people create so that the code goes into the appropriate destination, which is different environments. Now, should we have many branches? What are the pros and cons of having a lot of branches? Or can we do everything from one single branch? This is what is controlled by the branching workflow which a organization has adapted for their purpose, which generally varies based on organization from organization to organization, and can depend on multiple factors. What is the size of the team? How specialist is the team in managing the branches properly? How frequent are we going to do and undo the applications when the errors are figured out? What is the frequency of we going back in time? So a lot of these things will decide what is the most apt or appropriate branching workflow. So there are 4 which I would like to discuss here. Majorly these 4 are only used in the industry today. 1, 2, 3, 4: trunk based development, feature branching, Git flow branching, and forking workflow. So if I'm talking about the trunk based development, what exactly is this? We are going to have a main line which we call it as the master branch, and it is from the master branch we are going to have one more branch created in which the development is going to happen. And as the changes are happening into this branch, we'll directly merge them back into the master branch. Most simplest of all, I take the source code from the master branch to my local branch. I do the development on my local branch, and I put it back. I push the code back into the master branch. And once the code goes into the master branch, from the master branch you can probably send it into CI pipeline and then to the CD pipeline, and in sequence you would deploy into different environments. Now this is the simplest of all. This is the simplest of all the branching workflows, But then it has got its own problems. First and most important thing, we are making an assumption that the developers who are working on the application development are gurus. They don't make mistakes. They are ideal developers. They are always going to write fantastic code which doesn't need to be reviewed once again by anybody else. It is the most optimized code. They have taken care of all the coding practices. Basically, we are making an assumption that developers here are superheroes. Why? Because we are letting them to make changes to the main branch code at any point of time. We are letting them, our main line, to be updated with their code and with no other interference. And that probably may not be the case always. Though it is the simplest of all the Git branch workflows, it's rarely practiced in real time by many people. Yeah, if you are a single development, you can probably do that. You are only taking the benefit of Git so that you can go back in time and maintain multiple versions of your application. You're not working with team, you're the individual developer, then this seems to be probably the best option. But alternatively, the most common which is used is feature branch workflow. So in feature branch workflow, for every main branch, one new feature which we want to develop, we create a separate feature branch. So I, as one developer, would create a branch from the main pipeline, main branch. If you are my team member, you would also probably create a branch. If somebody else is also working on a new feature parallel with me, they will also. So every developer here is going to have their own branches created. All the developers then take a local copy of that branch, do the development on the local branch, and once they are done with the development, definitely they want somebody to review their code. If they want to review their code, they will merge the code which they have done into local development with the remote feature branch. Once we have a remote feature branch, there the pull request has to be created, and at the time of creating the pull request, we might invite reviewers. We might discuss our code with our peers, find out good and bad, whatever was taken care of by the developer. And once the team is convinced that everything is all good, we would want to have a pull request completed for the code to go from the dev branch, I would say feature branch, to the master branch, the main branch. So I repeat, the procedure is fairly straightforward. We would have a master branch, and I'm not going to ever push my code directly to the master branch. No, we'll never push our code into the master branch. Even if I have a local copy of the master branch, from there I'm going to create a new feature branch. On the feature branch, I'm going to make the changes, and once the changes are done to the feature branch, I will push it to the remote feature branch. From local feature, I'll push it into the remote feature branch, and from remote feature branch, I would want it to go into the master branch, but only after some review. Sorry. So we create a branch, we call this as a feature branch. We add commits, one or more commits we add to the feature branch. And after pushing the code into the remote server, we are going to create a pull request, discuss and review the code. And if everything is fine, we would probably even test on the environment where we want to deploy the application, development environment we can call it, and with that also everything looks good, I would merge it with the master branch. So there is a master branch, and master branch is the only way to release anything into production. So if my code has to go into production, it has to first go into the master branch. And master branch should always be in ready to release state. Tomorrow if my production server crashed, I should again push my master branch code into the production branch. That means it should be always ready. The code in the master branch should be stable. You should protect the master branch with branch policies. These branch policies are basically for enforcing certain conditions before a merge of a feature branch can be done on the master branch. There should be at least 2 people who have reviewed the code and given approval for merging. That can be a branching policy, of which sometimes the person who's pushed the code himself can be one, or he should not be the one. And the pull request which is created should have been compulsory reviewed in next 24 hours. So like this, branching policies can be created, and those policies are nothing but the process which we are building for our organization, for our code to get merged into the master branch. The idea is simple. The code, if it has to go into the master branch, it should be stable, it should have been tested so that it is immediately ready to release if something is required on the production. Any change to the master branch flow should happen only and only through pull request. That means we should not be able to directly push it into the master branch, which we are going to actually do it here. In the trunk based development, I will directly push it into the master branch. Here we are not going to push it into the master branch. Compulsory, there has to be code review created. Code has to be discussed. And when all the parties are happy that everything is good, then it should get merged into the master branch. Yes, at times we are also going to go for tagging. And these tagging will help us to know what are the different milestones which we have achieved. That is master branch. Then I told you feature branch will be there. Use feature branch for all new features and bug fixes. Anything you want to do as a developer, you're not going to touch the main line. You'll create a new line, you'll make changes, you'll commit your code, you'll create a pull request, and when the pull request is completed, this feature branch should be destroyed. The feature branch is always supposed to be a very short-lived branch. It should not have a very long lifetime. The purpose of that is, in the entire project, it is only one feature which I want to develop. So, in case the feature branch is having long life, you may want to use feature flags. In case the feature branch is going to go for longer life, you may want to have feature flags. Feature flags are nothing but a lot of conditions which we can add to our branch. And gradually we may want to probably put the conditions to true state. And only when the condition is true, our code should be deployed into the relevant environment, otherwise it should not be. Or in other words, let the code be deployed at the time of execution based on some condition. Certain code should be bypassed and that feature should not be applied into our application. Something like hiding a menu item. Code is already written for the menu, but I may not want to display that unless the feature is enabled. So those are feature flags. Changes from the feature branch to master branch only flow through pull request. Name of your feature branch should reflect the purpose. So lifetime of the feature branch is only and only that particular feature. What can be the feature? Implementation of login page. Probably that can be the feature. Or changing of title on all pages can be a feature. Setting up footer properly can be a feature, or it can be bug fixes, which can be also part of feature. So a feature branch most of the time is a short-lived branch which is created from the master branch and which eventually merges back into the master branch. And for next feature, we'll again create a new feature branch. And the code will never go directly into the master branch. It will go via feature through a pull request into the master branch. And then we have got a pull request, which is nothing but ability of a person to review the code before it gets merged into the main line. So review and merge code with pull request. Also the pull request will automate what you inspect and validate as a part of pull request. That means something like unit testing can be integrated into our pull request by way of creating some validation pipelines. Track pull request completion during duration and set goals to reduce the time it takes. All these things are part of pull request. So code goes from master to new feature, it gets completed, feature via pull request goes back into master, and that's a loop, and it continues forever like that. And once it goes into the master, we would deploy it into the production and further continue the next iteration. And probably this is the most common workflow which is used in most of the organization because of its simplicity. You have ability to do code reviews, yes. Are we touching the master branch when it is already gone into the production until the next release? No. We are doing everything into the feature branch. Once the feature is thoroughly tested, then only we are going to merge it into the master branch. Then the most important, most commonly used workflow by a lot of organization is Git flow branching workflow. Now what happens in this Git flow branching workflow is a great for release based software workflow, where you are talking about releasing going for multiple releases. Git flow is great for going multiple releases. Maybe every 15 days you are going to do a release. You have multiple sprints for your application and you want to have sprint by sprint released of your application, and you want to track all those releases. Provides a robust framework for managing larger projects. So there are a lot of people working on the project. At the same time, the project is going to go for a longer duration. Yes, it gives you all those facilities to deal with the situation. Dedicated channel for hot fixes to production will be there in the Git flow branching workflow. So overall, the flow is Git flow, provided there is a development branch created from the master branch. So we'll have one master branch which is really a master. The code of the master branch is what we are always going to deploy into production over here also. The code from master branch will be taken into a development branch. And from development branch, we are going to create feature branches where multiple features can be developed parallelly. And all the features eventually will be merged back into the development branch by way of pull request. Obviously, for every feature, we might create a separate pull request. Feature 1 development, one pull request. Feature 2 development, another pull request. Feature 3 development, one more pull request. So how many features are being parallelly developed? For each one of them, we will have a separate pull request created, and all these eventually will merge back into the development branch. Once they merge into the development branch, the code from the development branch will be deployed into the dev environment, where the developers are going to do the testing as everybody's code has merged into the development one. Feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, eventually everything will go back into the development branch. From development, I'll put it into the development environment, development virtual machines or development services where our application is supposed to be hosted. Once the code is into development environment, tested by the development team, green signal given, from the development branch only, we are going to get a release branch created. Release branch we will deploy into a test environment, where the testing team is going to do the thorough testing of the application, make certain changes, basically propose certain changes which will be done by a set of people, and eventually it will also get merged back into the development, and same thing will also merge back into the master. Come back into the main pipeline. This whole thing is demonstrated pretty well in this simple diagram. We'll have one master branch. From the master branch, we'll create a development branch. From the development branch, I'm going to create a feature branch like that. Multiple feature branches would be developed from the development branch. And once we have all the development branches, all the feature branches completed, they'll merge back into the development, deploy into dev environment, all good, deploy into release. Create a new release branch. In release branch, deploy into QA first and then UAT if needed. Any kind of changes, do it here. And once we know release branch is stable, the code from release can go back to master. The code from release will also merge into development. Both the places we are going to merge the code of release, so that in the next iteration, that changes which we have done here should not be lost. And obviously, once the code has gone into master branch, we'll deploy it into the production environment. So you may have dev branch, code going into dev environment. You may have QA1 environment. If it is there, do it. And then promote it into release branch. Release branch will go into QA1 and UAT in sequence. And once release is good, merge release into development, merge release into master. And the code once goes into the master branch, you'll have to do a pull request. You have to do a pull request from here to here and here to here. And once the code goes into the respective branch, like master branch, I'll first put into staging, which is just a step before going into production. But once the code has been deployed into production, then also there is a possibility that some kind of issue is figured out. Maybe in the entire page, one spelling of the word is incorrect, which none of the people who are testing nor the developers could catch it. But the code has already gone into development. What should happen? From the master branch, I'm going to create a hotfix branch. I don't want to again go through this entire cycle for a small spelling mistake. So from the master, I'll create a development branch, make the changes here, merge it back into the master. Finish very quick. And because the changes are done and we want them not to be lost, we'll merge them also into the development branch. So like this, hotfix branch can also be used at times for moving the code into hotfix environment and then eventually into production environment. You might have a separate environment for hotfix where we can probably upload the code, test it, and when everything is found good, merge it into master, merge it into development. So here development is a long-lived branch, master is a long-lived branch, but feature and the hotfix are very, very, very short-lived branches. Release, you might create probably a separate branch for every release and keep them for a while so that tomorrow if you want to go back, you should be able to use it and redeploy it. Or you may want to even keep release as a short life, that's your choice. Use it for only testing in QAT and UAT. Use it for only testing in QA environment and UAT environment and then destroy them. Don't keep them after that. That's absolutely your choice. So this is how we will go for different branches, multiple branches. If the team is not very systematic and not following discipline, randomly making changes to these branches, you are creating a mess for yourself, which will become very difficult to gather. So when this particular branching workflow is supposed to be used by the organization, quite good amount of training has to be provided to all the participants who are contributing to this so that they know what they are doing and what will be their next step. So that smoothly the code goes from one branch to other branch and at the same time into different environments. While a dedicated branch to prepare releases, why should have a separate release branch? That could be a question, right? While there is a separate branch called release, it makes it possible for one team to polish the current release while another team to continue working on features for the next release. First 15 days are over, 15 days you went for release. Some people can make this fine tuning of the release, and the next sprint, new features, we have already started implementing it. Obviously, when this release which was done by the core developer is all fixed, we'll merge it back into the master and development, and then this release branch will be deleted, short-lived. You don't need that because the purpose of it was to only test your code and at the same time do a parallel development. So you created a release branch, you are testing this code, fine-tuning it, and from the development new branches started coming. So that way release branch is sometimes not required, but this is the purpose. Parallel development should be able to continue. And this is what large organization with big number of teams only should afford it with proper discipline. If not, this creates a mess. Then we have got forking branch workflow. Forking branch workflow is majorly useful for open source community projects. Imagine I am doing something unique and I want the entire world to participate in my development. Whoever is interested, they can take the code from where I am living or where my current code is, and they should be able to add value to it, and they should give it back to me so that many people can benefit out of that project, open source project. So I am going to have one code repository where I am going to put my branch, and then I can use Git flow branching workflow, feature branching workflow, whatever, trunk based workflow. That's my choice, whatever flow I use within my repository. Now if you want to contribute to my project, I'm not going to give you direct access to my code or my branches. I will ask you to create a forked version of my code. You'll fork it. You'll create a branch out of it. Fork means entire repository you're cloning it now. The way my team and myself works with my repository, your team is going to work with your repository. You will give them relevant permissions. They will take the code. They will make changes. They'll push it back into your main line, let's say master branch. When you know you have contributed something good enough here, you will create a pull request of your master branch with my master branch. I will do a code review, and if I know you have really contributed great, I would merge all that changes into my repository. So here we are not talking about branching only of a particular branch. No, we are talking about entire repository cloning, which is happening on the server itself. Every developer will have its own repository, entire repository of their own, best suited for open source project. Contributions can be integrated without the need of everybody to push to a single code repository. You push it to your repository, I'll push it to my repository. When everything is stable, then only the merging will happen. So this is how the forking branch workflow allows open source project contributors to all take the code from where it is now and add value and push it back into the main branch. So one of these branching workflows is what every organization in the industry is using today. It can be trunk based development, but I told you it is good only for individual developers. It may not be good for a team of developers, because there we would want to have proper code reviews. Somebody can be smarter than the other person, and that person should be deployed to approve the code, and then only it should be going into the main line. And that is what is happening in the feature branch workflow. We have one master line. From the master we'll create a feature branch. do all the code development in the feature branch and merge it back into the master via a pull request. Git flow, lot of branches can lead to a lot of confusion if not properly handled, but at the same time you have got multiple releases, and when the product is released we want to do simultaneous development without blocking the code. Yes, one of the best options to use. Open source project, you should go for forking workflows. So these are different branching workflows which can be used in the industry. So that's all from my side. It was a small session planned for something big, but suddenly I got an appointment to be taken care of at 6:15, so I kept the session short. Otherwise, my plan was to actually take you through the entire process practically, which definitely on one other day I'll plan to do it very soon. I would take you through how to implement each one of them practically in some other session. That's all for today. Look forward to more such short sessions at least. Request you to subscribe in case you have not subscribed to our channel, and I'll catch up with you guys very soon once again. Thank you and bye bye.